Okay, James, let me bring you in on this issue of, I hope I'm saying it right, CANZUK International. Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, the acronym obviously. What are you guys advocating for?
So what we advocate, you were close, it's CANZUK International.
CANZUK,
so Canada,
okay.
Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, yeah, not a problem. A lot of people get that wrong. So what we're advocating is for Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom to form closer economic, social, and diplomatic ties. So our primary goal is for free movement for citizens between these four countries based on the current free movement protocols that currently exist between Australia and New Zealand under the Trans-Tasman Travel Agreement. What we would then do is expand free trade, as combined free trade from these four countries would be estimated $3.5 trillion US. And we'd also work towards security developments through the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance that currently exists between these four countries and the United States of America, and also with the development of foreign policy as well.
What are the barriers that are currently in place that would prevent that which you just described?
I mean, the barriers that are currently in place, I mean, obviously, like I say, our primary objective is freedom of movement. The barriers are obviously the arduous immigration controls between the four countries. We get thousands of emails every single week, pretty much, from people who have a spouse, say a Canadian who has an Australian spouse, and they can't live in Australia with their spouse or their children because the immigration controls are too crazy. I see it myself when I go back to London every 6 months for business, family, and friends, and so on. And I find it bizarre that members of, citizens of member EU countries can go straight through in one single fast-track line, but citizens of Canada, Australia, and New Zealand have to queue up in a separate line, even though they share the same language, the same culture as us. To me, it's kind of bizarre. We share far more with these countries than we do with the European Union. So there's plenty of barriers in place that CANZUK International wants to break down, and we're committed to doing so, and hopefully getting majority, if not all, of these barriers broken by 2020.
Francie McKenzie, I wonder if you could share what you think the odds are of James Skinner succeeding at that, given what we've seen south of the border here, obviously an attempt to put literal and figurative walls up around the United States, and certainly in the case of the United Kingdom and other places in the European Union, a lot less fascination with the free movement of people from country to country to country. What do you think?
Well, a lot of these ideas, it's important to note about for calling for closer cooperation, be it the movement of people or more trade, there have been calls for these kinds of this tightening of associations throughout the 20th century. And there have been various plans put in place to move people around and to bring about free trade. And for the most part, they've been either unworkable bureaucratically, or they've actually engendered tremendous opposition. So if we talk about trade rather than the movement of people for a moment, it's important to remember that despite many attempts to create more trade within the Commonwealth, many of these countries are actually competitors with one another. And so there wasn't that natural complementarity that made them, that made Commonwealth free trade actually realizable or in the best interest of the participants. As for the free movement of people, I certainly hope that the Commonwealth or no Commonwealth countries would go the way of the United States at the moment, but there are going to be all kinds of bureaucratic and economic considerations that will probably make it very, very difficult to work out.
Mr. Maharaj, let me pick up on the trade angle there. For decades, literally for decades in Canada, we have been hearing successive governments talk about the need to expand our trade beyond the market to the south of us, which, does 90% of our business. It's there, it's big, it's close, and despite efforts to increase trade among Commonwealth nations, it really hasn't happened in the way that people who champion the idea would like it to. So the question is there really anything you can do about that?
Well, I think when you look at the trends are very positive. As we speak now, intra-Commonwealth trade is around $700 billion US. By 2020, $1 trillion, and by 2030, $2.75 trillion. It is 19% more cost-effective now to trade within the Commonwealth than out of the Commonwealth. So the data would suggest otherwise, that the prospects are good and there are immense opportunities for trading within the Commonwealth. And when Commonwealth trade ministers meet on the 10th of March here in London, that's what ministers are going to talk about, of how do you further boost the Commonwealth trade advantage from 19% to around 30%.
I hear you, but let me follow up. The American border for 80% of Canadians is a 2-hour drive away. Nigeria is a lot further away than that. It's a psychological thing for some people. They just don't think of trading opportunities that far away. How do you combat that?
But it depends on what you trade in. Trade in services would be different from trading in commodities. I think that in the new world dispensation that we have, I mean, you have outsourcing, you have different technologies, you have financial transactions. So I think we have to reimagine trade, to think about trade simply as a construct where you exchange commodities, to my mind, wouldn't be reflecting the very progressive and different world trading architecture that we have now.
Stephen, you think they can make some progress on that?
Well, I think so, because I mean, you just need to look at the fuss the American high-tech industries made over Trump's recent ban.
Suspension.
Suspension, yes. They want free. They want free movement of people, as well as access to the technology and so on that are coming out of India, for example. And I think there's going to be a lot more interaction and a lot more trade and a lot, frankly, more movement of people. That's inevitable amongst not only Commonwealth countries, but of course amongst many of the economic players in the world. Just if I may just comment very briefly on CANZUK, I think probably all of us at the table here would like to see some ease of movement of people. But the CANZUK idea is very narrow, and it's a movement of people from 4 countries. And frankly, there are some resonances here that I think a lot of Commonwealth members would be slightly concerned about.
Can I put that to James? You anticipated my next question, which, James, I mean, the 4 countries that you're talking about, Canada, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, coincidentally happen to be, at the moment, majority white countries. And there are other members of the Commonwealth, obviously, who might wonder, hey, how come we don't belong on that club? What's the response to that?
It's certainly not because they're white countries. I mean, if we were going to go for a full Caucasian union, we would have brought Cyprus and Malta into it as well, but you'll notice that we haven't. You'll also notice as well that these countries are majority Christian countries as well, but we're certainly not waging war on Sikhism or Islam. These are completely preposterous proposals. The reason we're promoting these 4 countries is that they're so economically and socially aligned. If I can reel them off, which I'm able to do all day pretty much, they share the same head of state, Queen Elizabeth II. They share the same parliamentary-style Westminster system, the same common law legal system, the same respect for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. They have very good economic growth rates, very good GDP per capita rates, very good methods of tackling unemployment, very good methods of tackling security and counter-terrorism initiatives. The list goes on and on and on as to why these 4 countries would be so good at uniting under free movement, free trade, and foreign policy. There's absolutely no racial issue here whatsoever, apart from a couple of people who just want to, throw out the race card because they know it draws attention when there's absolutely no holding and no grounds for it whatsoever.
So do you see it as merely an ease of travel thing at this moment, or are you prepared to go beyond it with more, a deeper integration?
We're certainly not advocating the integration that we've seen with the European Union. I just want to make that clear. I mean, what the European Union has done is more, it started off as economic integration with the EEC, and I think that's why a majority of the British public voted into it in the referendum in 1975. However, from June 23rd of last year, majority of British people voted out of it because they saw that it moved from an economic union towards more a political union. The European Union becoming advancing its agenda for ever closer union and the federalist state, which people in the United Kingdom did not want. A lot of countries throughout the European Union do not want. So we're certainly not advocating that with CANZUK. We never will. What we are simply advocating is for free movement between 4 independent sovereign countries, and it will remain that way, to work together towards free trade and foreign policy for the benefit of their societies and also for their economies as well.
Understood. I'm not sure how often Canadians or people here in Ontario think about the Commonwealth, but we're happy that they have for the last half hour. And we're grateful that all of you were able to help us do that. So thanks to Deodat Maharaj, the Commonwealth Deputy Secretary General, who was on the line from London, England, to James Skinner from Vancouver, the Chief Executive of CANZUK, which I will now pronounce properly, CANZUK International, Francine McKenzie at that other London, Ontario. She's a professor of history at Western University there. And Stephen Rockel, Associate Professor in African History and Colonialism at the University of Toronto. Good of all of you to join us on TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It
was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.